So today I'm going to show you guys how to do various things with making your own sprite and using the tools provided within the GameMaker Sprite Editor. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a new sprite. Can name it whatever, quite literally. And what we're going to do is we're going to do edit sprite. And as you can see, there's nothing here. So what we're going to do is we're going to click here to create a new sprite. You can set the dimensions to anything you want. Here we're going to make it, I don't know, 20 by 20. And as you can see, it created a little image here. So the first thing that I want you guys to take note is this little menu bar right here. So we have file, it's new, create from file, add from file, save to PNG, stuff that we don't really have to worry about quite yet. And then, just like with almost every edit tab, it has the undo, redo, cut, copy, paste, etc. And here we have the transform tool, which you guys should be familiar with if you watched the first version of Ping, where it has scale right here. But we'll get to these later since we don't have anything for our sprite yet. Then here in images, there's a whole bunch of options that we're going to talk about later. And then there's also animation, which I will talk in another video. So you're going to double click that image and it brings up something that kind of looks similar to Paint, if any of you guys have messed with that. So as you can see, you can draw stuff here. You can change the size of the pencil so you can make it where it's just 1 pixel width. And here you have the undo and redo, but it's kind of hard to see from here. So what we're going to do is we're going to zoom in, and it's a lot easier if you zoom it in to the point where the squares for the transparent background are equal to that of what you're drawing. Or what you can also do is right here is you can have a grid that's toggled, and that's if you want to have it to where it doesn't match up with the transparent background. So it's up to you guys whether or not you want to keep those. And so here we have the various tools. We've been starting off using the pencil tool. Here we have the eraser tool. It can change its size just like the pencil does, so I'm just going to get rid of all of that. Here we have the airbrush tool, which kind of replicates what the pencil does, except in a more blurred fashion. Kind of like what you would expect with an actual airbrush. So, next right here is the water droplet tool. So say we have our color when we're drawing with our pencil. Oops. And then we choose a blue. So say that we want to go back to red, but we can't remember which red that we had picked. So we're going to go to our eyedrop tool and we're going to left click the red. As you can see, it changed our left color back to our red, and you can also right click to get a right color. So if you go to the pencil, left click gives you the red and right click gives you the blue. So I'm going to erase that again. So here are some nice little tools. Here we have the line tool, which once again you can change the size of all of these. You can have just a normal line or ones with arrows, and as you can see, the arrow fills in with whatever you have for the right color. Does the same thing with the double arrow one. And next, here we have a shape tool where you just kind of click how you want it to be. And as you can see, if you click over to where it was before, it gets rid of what it had. So you can do a whole bunch of fancy little stuff with this. You can have it to where it's just the line, or you can have it fill. So just like the shape tool that we had, we can do the same thing with the rectangle tool, the circle tool, or the ellipse tool, and the rounded rectangle tool. So let me just show you guys this one more time. And so next we have the selection tool, which is right here. What you can do is you can select what you have, and as you see, it creates kind of this little marching ant kind of box around it, and then you have a north, south, east, west kind of looking cursor. That means that you can move around whatever you had selected. And a little trick that you guys can do is if you still have the selection, you can press Control and, whoops, let's get that selected again. You can press Control to remove a region, and you can use Shift to add a region. And as you can see, it only moves around what we have selected. So after you have your selection, if you want to stop the selection, you can just go to a different tool. Here we have the bucket tool. As you can see, it has like a little button and a cursor, and you just click and it fills in, just like you would imagine a bucket tool would do. Here we have the change all the pixel colors. So if we want to change the red, what we would do is if we wanted to change this red to be blue, it would take this color and you right click to the color that you want, or left click, and it'll change that color. Similarly, if you were to left click to turn this blue red. Next, we have the text tool, something that a lot of people should probably be familiar with. So after you click the text tool, you click on the image and it brings up this draw text box, kind of like what you would do if you were to display a message, say for like game over. So this is really helpful if you want to add stuff like start game for a menu and stuff like that. So we'll put hello. And as you can see, it kind of becomes a little bit blurry because it's trying to make it look a little bit better. So if we were to zoom out, it's not as sharp, but that's completely intentional. So the next thing that I want to show you guys is the Magic Wand tool. So what this does is, this is kind of similar to the Paint Bucket tool, except it does it with selection. So if we left click the blue, it selects all of the blue. Or we can start selecting red. And again, Shift to add, or Control to get rid of it. And lastly, we have the Select by Spraying, which has the size and pretty much just go over it like you were painting with a brush, except it's using selection. So say you're trying to select something, but you're having a really hard time just trying to get this one little spot, and you don't really want to try to do that by constantly just creating a new box. So that pretty much covers all of the tools. So the next thing that I want to show you guys is how to use the different menus for transform and images. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw a couple of shapes. So just do some black dots, and then make the size a little bit smaller, and I'll just put a few colors in here. So first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go over the transform toolbar. So here we have Shift, and as you can see, it brings up a little new window, and you can move the horizontal and the vertical. You can also have it wrap, which doesn't do too much. So we're going to go back to transform. Now I'm going to show you guys the mirror flip. As you can see, you can have it mirror horizontally, or you can have it flip vertically, or even both. This is good for if you want to have sprites that are the same, say a leaf, but you don't want to have to completely remake it to have the leaf upside down, so you can do something like this to do so. Next we're going to go to the rotate, And here we have some presets where it can go 90 degrees, 80 degrees, or 270 degrees in the clockwise direction, or you can make it counterclockwise. If you don't like the presets, you can always click and drag this bar right here for the angle. Next up is the scale, which you guys should all be familiar with if you've done the first version of Ping. You can either half or double it. And again, you can always use the bar here. And you can also change it to where it only changes the horizontal or the vertical. Next up is skew, and what this does is it takes the image and it curves it on a diagonal depending on which side you choose, horizontal or vertical. So if I choose horizontal, as you can see, it kind of stretches it out to the left and the right depending on if it's a negative or a positive number that I choose. And then for vertical, it'll do the same thing, just as a vertical diagonal. So these three guys right here are technically transforms. So here we have a resize the canvas. Here we can change the width and the height percentage or pixels to change our canvas right here. And we can also keep the aspect ratio. So if we do 40 for the width and we have keep aspect ratio on, it will also change the height. But if we don't, as you can see, if we have this unchecked, it only changes one thing. Another thing, this thing might look familiar. It's the position, which is also used for fixed move direction. So say we want to crop the image, but we don't want it to crop it from the center. So say we want to crop it from the right. So we'll change this to 15. And as you can see, it cropped from the right side and it kept this right here. Another one would be stretch. It's pretty much the same thing, except instead of changing the canvas, we're changing the sprite. So we'll change this to 120. And you can change what kind of quality that you want. So if we do excellent, as you can see, when we have it zoomed out, it kind of looks like it's the same. And one thing that you'll also notice is that it'll also change the size of the canvas. This is because it realizes, oh, okay, you're making the sprite bigger or smaller. If it's bigger, okay, we'll make the canvas bigger for you so you don't have to readjust it yourself. So we're going to try doing stretch again. We're going to do it at 120 because we want to change the size. If we go to pour, as you can see, it pretty much keeps most of the solid pixelation. It just kind of warps our little colored dots. So with the stretch, the more excellent the quality is, or the better, the more that it's going to kind of blur it. So if we change that again. So you can see it kind of blurs it a little bit, but the lower the quality, say if we have it at normal, it's going to keep most of that pixelation, but it's starting to blur a little bit. Now, the last thing that I want to go over in the transform is the crop. So we'll just select this part of the image right here. After that, we can go down to crop, and you can change the border size, so let's say 2. And as you can see, it added a border around our image, or we can crop the image to where it has no border around the pixels. This makes it easier if you want to just save some room and try to find the exact dimensions of your sprite. So say we want to add the border 2 to it. Okay, so this is 2 pixels over to the border. So now that we got the transform bar out of the way, we're going to go to image. And this is going to take a while to get through. So as you would imagine, the black and white actually just changes the image to just black and white like you would imagine it would. Then here we have colorize, which is similar to changing the hue. So if any of you guys are familiar with, say, Photoshop, Paint Tool SI, some of you guys may be familiar with this. So you can either just change the hue to the color that's right here, or you can shift the hue, which would change each one of the hue as if we were changing them individually to a different color. And then here we have colorize partial, and this makes it to where if we want to just change the pink that we have, we can change it to a different color. Now we have it as shift hue, but if we just want the exact color, say we want to change it to blue, as you can see, it only changed the pink one. So another one is intensify. So what this does is it can intensify the value. So if we go to value 0, it changes everything to black. If we go all the way up, it changes all of the black to white. And right here we have the saturation. So saturation is how intense the color is. So neon would be highly saturated, and earthy kind of tones or grayish would be low saturation, as you can see. So it would change the saturation to be white, and if we changed the value, that would make it darker or lighter. And then if we bump the saturation up, there's not too much of a difference because I already picked bright colors. But if I change the value when we have saturation all the way up, you'll notice that instead of changing it to black, it turned it to red. And that's because this is with binary, also known as just like pixels. So if any of you guys are familiar with Paint Tool SI, it'll do the same thing if you have a layer set to binary, and it would change from black to red to yellow and to white respectively the lower the opacity is on the layer. So next we're going to do invert. Some of you guys may be familiar with this. So what it does is it takes whatever color you have and it makes it the inverse of whatever it is. So black obviously turns to white, and as you can see, it shifted the hues around. So next we're going to go to the next section. So here we have making the image opaque, and it kind of just takes a bunch of colors from the image, and it's kind of a mess, so it's not really much to bother yourself with. So here we have make a color transparent, or just get rid of a color. So as you can see, it's defaulted to black right now. So you can change how intense or how the tolerance is going to be. So if it's black, it's only going to get rid of black until you get to the very top, because the tolerance is going to go, okay, you want black and all the colors around it. So say that we go with red, so you see it gets rid of the red, but as the tolerance goes up, it gets rid of all the colors. Next we have smooth edges. So you can see it kind of blurs it a little bit just because it makes it to where everything is not so solid. So if you wanted something that was pixel based but kind of had some opacity to it, or just looked a little bit smoother in an HD kind of environment, this would be the way to go. Here we have the opacity tool, and this changes the opacity of your image, and you can also have it relative or not, but as you can see, it adds a weird thing in the center, so we're going to keep relative on. So say that I want it at 54 alpha, so you can see it's now become transparent. Let's see. Here we have set alpha from the file. It's something that we're not going to worry about, so we're going to go on to the next one. So here we have the fade, and what this does is you can choose a color. Let's go with a darker green. And as you can see right here, when the amount is at full, all of our sprite has turned green. But the lower you go, and once you go back to 0, it gives us our original sprite. But if you keep going up, it kind of gives it a green sort of hue. And that's because this is a good way to do an animation of the sprite going from its original fading to some kind of color if you really wanted to. So next there's going to be blur. You can blur only the colors, or you can also blur the entire image, or just the image and leave the colors alone. So for this example, we're just going to blur the colors, and you can change the amount of the blur. So you have small, medium, or large. So if you have medium, as you can see, it kind of just gives us a colored orb, but it stays within the sprites that we had. So if we went back to blur and we said blur transparency, as you can see, it blurred the entire image. So if you kind of wanted to make a sphere and you wanted to have it be black on one part and then specifically red near over here, you could just do blur the colors and it gives you a nice gradient sphere. So next we're going to do sharpen. So you can sharpen the colors, or you can also sharpen the transparency. And you can make it subtle, you can make it strong, or you can make it special. As you can see, it kind of gives it like almost a dark orb that's reflecting different colors. So even if you wanted to, you can, after doing sharpen, you can go to blur, you can give it a small blur. So it's just something to give you some really cool effects. So next we have outline. Here you can choose whatever color you want. I'm going to go with a bright green. You can change the thickness of it, and you can also have it placed inside the image. So as you can see, it's kind of replacing what we have for our sprites, but if we just wanted it on the outside to give it like a kind of glowing effect, you could. And you can also smooth it or have whatever you have remove your original image. So as you can see, it's kind of created this sort of pattern and outline around our sprite here. So next is going to be shadow. Let's go with a dark red so it's easier to see. As you can see, it has a check mark for soft shadow, and what that does is it gives it kind of a blurriness, or you can just have a normal shadow which keeps it at solid pixels. So we're going to go with soft. And here we have the opacity. So if we wanted it to be the exact color with no opacity, no transparency, we'd have it all the way up. Or if we wanted it to be really subtle, we can go further down to make it a lower number. So changing the vertical and horizontal can change the position of the shadow, which is really good for game that uses light direction. So here, if we wanted the light source coming from up here, we can move the shadows down here. So next, there's glow, which is similar to outline. We're going to have it placed outside the image, and we can change the alpha and opacity, and also the thickness that we wanted. So as you can see, it kind of gives it like this really cool glowing effect, which is nice for, say, if you had a theme that had like lights for a racetrack or an alien type game. This would be a good thing to use if you wanted a glowing effect. So next one is button eyes. And this kind of just makes it to where it looks like a nice little button, so you can change that. Like always, you can change what you want the hue to be. And you can also change the thickness of what the button looks like. So say you wanted the button to look like this, or you wanted it to be a little bit lighter. It kind of just adds a 3D effect to it, as you can see right here. And you can also have smooth edges, which makes it transparent. And last but not least, in the image editing, we have a gradient fill. So here you choose two different colors, kind of like how you have the left and right click color. So let's go with red and yellow, kind of for a fiery feel. So once you pick your colors, you can see that there's a kind right here, which has a whole bunch of different gradient patterns that you can use. So you can have it be just straight red to yellow, or red to yellow back to red, and a whole bunch of other different kinds. You can have it be replace, or you can have it just changing the colors that we have. So that covers the entire sprite editor. There's a whole bunch of cool things that you can do with combinations of doing blur with a glow and everything. So just have fun and experiment making your own sprite.